welcome to our panel. Today we have Shrishti, we have Nayonika, we have somebody from Canada, we have somebody from the UK, super special, super amazing. Let's start by introducing yourselves.
So I'm Nayonika, TISB batch of 2019. I now study law at LSE, which is in London, so UK.
I'm Shrishti, class of 2019. I went to Canada, so I'm studying at the University of British Columbia, and I'm double majoring in economics and psychology. So for me, it was more of like what I don't like that got eliminated first, which is like, I was like, I don't want to do science. I don't want to do math. So for me, it was the social sciences. And I've always really liked psychology. I've always liked economics. So I was like, why not put it together? Because there's this new emerging field called behavioral economics. I really like this combination, so I just went ahead with that.
I always kind of thought when you're a kid and you only know like 5 jobs exist, and so you're like, this is one, this is another. So like in the back of my mind, like being a lawyer is like very like I'm a kind of loud person, and I always like the social sciences more than the science roots. I was like, oh, maybe I should become a lawyer, but then I didn't really decide on anything for a really long time, and then I finally was like, okay, let me just look into it and see what it's like and if I would actually like it. So I actually I applied in India as well as the UK. So for India, you have to like start for like entrance tests and stuff. So I was like, okay, let me just look at what these books are about. And then I started reading it, and I actually really liked the subject itself, which is kind of weird, but like all of like the stuff you have to learn. And I was like, okay, you might as well do it. And then at some point I was like, okay, let me look further into it and do some more research. And I did an internship in at a legal office, and that it was there that I realized like I can do a law degree and I don't have to be a lawyer. So I have like outs. It's not really the end. Like I can do a law degree and like become a CA or like do pretty much anything. So I was like, well, if I find it interesting and there are options afterwards, I might as well do it now. So I pretty much picked it.
So for me, a lot of people, like when I first decided that I was going to double major instead of major minor, a lot of people told me that it was very ambitious. And like even now, it's kind of a lot more work than just one major. So I guess that's one of like the cons, I guess. But if you really like it, you don't feel it that much. And I think one of the biggest pros is that you get to like go deep into 2 subjects instead of 1. So you have a variety in terms of the classes that you take. And also another con I would say is that because like a lot of universities have like requirements that you need to finish your degree, you have lesser room for electives because your 2 majors themselves count as electives for each other. So that's kind of one of the cons that I found. But I think other than that, it's pretty like interesting to see how the 2 majors will kind of at some point, like maybe 3rd year when you start taking like really high level classes, you start seeing how the 2 subjects kind of intertwine. And I think that's when it gets really interesting. Like obviously I'm just going into 2nd year, so I'm going to take this class on gambling and decision making and introduction to strategic thinking. And I'm actually really excited for that because strategic thinking is kind of like psychology, but it's an econ class. And I'm kind of excited to see how they're gonna like explain one in terms of the other, if you can say that.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. Like when you have a double major, you can always like connect the 2, and finding connections is always really cool.
So I think one of the biggest things I found out about law when I went is that in terms of like skills and like the way you apply your mind, you kind of run the entire gambit. So you have really high level like theory things where like a subject that I took last year was public law. It was a lot of like high level theory, how the government works, why it works, that when you have to sort of be like, well, should it be this way? Like, why is it that, because the UK doesn't have a constitution, so it's all kind of messed up. And so it's kind of like, well, is having like a physical constitution better, or is having this vague set of rules that everyone kind of follows because tradition better, and how does it work out in the end? And you also have the other end of the gambit where it's more like the application side. So they're like, this is the law, and how exactly does it apply to you? And like you find out, like, again, it's really cool because in like criminal law, you find out that like eating out at a restaurant fulfilled most of the call them actus reus, but the conduct, actually all of the conduct requirements of theft. So dishonesty, if you so dishonesty is the only part of theft that isn't already there when you're eating at a restaurant, because you haven't paid the bill yet, you haven't done anything. And so like it's really interesting to see these like concepts go and like trying and applying these rules. I find it like solving a puzzle, almost like the parts of math that I liked that are sort of in as well. So I find that's really interesting, is how you get to use your mind in like this degree. One of the cons I'd say is there is a lot of reading, especially if you're in like a common law jurisdiction, which is like the US, Canada, India, the UK. All of them fall under common law, which is cases also take precedence. So you have to know cases as well as statutes. So there's a lot of reading, and I think because it's like a direct line for career, a lot of people are really competitive. But I mean, if you're okay with that, and if you sort of don't mind how other people are doing and you just want to do your thing, then it's pretty decent, I think. If you know, yeah. So I think one of like the most important things is that like one of the biggest commodities we have, especially like of our age group, sort of going into college, is you have time. So you don't have to know what you want to do in your life just yet. You can, a way to think of it is, if you know what you want, you're like interested enough to study for like 3 or 4 years, then that's good enough, because you can always change your mind later. There's like a million conversion courses for law itself. Like you can do another degree and then you can do a GDL in the UK, which is like a 1-year course, and then you basically got a law degree. So it's not the end of the world to not know what you're doing. Don't worry about it too much, I think. But then I also would like to say that in the UK, you can't really change your course. If you change your course, you have to like sort of restart your thing. So you do have to know, at least if you're interested enough to study it for 3 years and finish your degree with it. But you don't have to stick to a career just yet. It isn't about that.
In terms of Canada, like one of the reasons I picked Canada was because it didn't, like on the application doesn't ask you what major you want to do. So I think in that sense, like you just have to know around what area you're going to be studying in, because you can either apply to science, arts, business, or law, or whatever. And I think one of the best things is that you declare your major only after first year. So throughout first year, you have like the freedom to take whatever classes you want, explore as much as you want. And that kind of like gives you an idea. Like even if like end of high school, you're like, I don't know what I want to do. You can go into college and be like, I'm going to take these classes. They seem interesting. And then you can figure out for yourself what you really want to do. And like I said before, one of the easiest things to do is to eliminate what you don't like and then decide what you like. Because we have a lot of options, like in terms of career, like what you want to study, what you want to major in, etc. So if you don't know what you like, it's easier to eliminate what you don't like and then kind of like zero in on what you want to do.
And a little bit more of a factual context here, if both of you please correct me if I'm wrong, but I know in the US you have, in most colleges, you do have 2 years to declare your major, and then Shrishti, in most Canadian colleges it's 1 year?
Some majors, it's you declare it after first year, but for some of them you declare it after second year.
And then Nayonika, you declare before you go in, right?
If you're early on, like in the first couple of months of college, they might let you switch into it, but it's very like department specific. You have to like email the department and ask them.
For IB, I think one of my like major things that was not work was music. So I kind of threw myself into music when I was like, I'm done with working for a while. But I'd say there wasn't a balance as such. There was still more work than life as such, because of like the kind of assignments that we had and the deadlines that were set and everything like that. But I think once I came to college, there was a lot more freedom in terms of how I chose to spend my time. There was definitely a lot of work. I'm not going to say that it became lesser or anything like that. If anything, it was a little more than what IB was. But I think the important part of college is that like the way you spend your time is totally up to you. Like you can, like, even if you have a lot of deadlines and stuff, I kind of made sure to like at least hang out with some friends for like 30 minutes, or like take some time to watch one episode of a TV show or something like that, or just like order food outside and like hang out with my friends. So something as simple as that can be another way to spend your time apart from studying. And even if you're studying, you can study with friends, which is something that you couldn't really do in the IB. But in college, there's like places you can go, like cafes you can go to and study with friends, and like in between you can take like 10-minute breaks, just talk to your friends, and then go back to studying. So I think that was one of like the major ways in which I spent time with people while being productive.
Like where my parents live now and where I lived when I was in when I went to TISB is pretty like remote. It's kind of like technically in Tamil Nadu, kind of remote. So I wouldn't say I had a very big social life, mainly because it was hard to get anywhere, what with Bangalore traffic and all. So I didn't have that big of like a social life outside of school. Like obviously over text and stuff like that, yes, but I didn't go out that much. But I was like also a major procrastinator. So I did leave a lot of things to last minute, which is not good. IB kids, don't do it, because that's when the stress of IB goes. So I would say like week to week, I do more work in college than I did in high school. But I think overall, the like stress of high school that I had, because I left everything to the last minute and then just had to do it in like one night, was like a little less. Like in college, I still kind of do the same thing, but I'm also like surrounded by a lot more people who are like doing very similar things to me. And so we all like kind of, I don't know, in college you're surrounded by people a lot more, like more often than you are in school. So you get more time to like work with people and like collaborate on stuff, which also might be frowned upon by Ivy. So yeah, I think like in college, one of the big aspects is the way you spend your time is different, and because you have more time to like socialize and like hang out, and you have more freedom, obviously. So there's that. But I think an important thing to do is to keep like a hard and fast line on when you have to like stop working, because I believe that after a point, even when you're working, you're really not learning anything. So you have to like remember to keep time to like sort of reset and refresh. And I think that's just a thing you have to stick to.
And I would like add to Shrishti's point about like studying with friends, something that I did not do at all in school. But it's like it's an extremely good thing to do in college because you're socializing and you're studying at the same time. And at first I thought like that's ridiculous. That's never gonna work for me. I know how I study, but I think that's like definitely one thing that can change in college, the way that you study things and the way that you approach things. And I found that to be super beneficial to me because, like you said, good balance between like work and like talking to your friends as well.
So like I actually joined a lot of clubs in the beginning, and there were people that I really enjoyed hanging out with. And I just took like that little extra effort to like hang out with them after the club like situation. So I think that also really helps because they're very similar to you if they're in the same club as you. So that also like helps in terms of like balancing between productive and non-productive time.
So at college, I joined a tabletop society, which is a club where you just play board games, and that's really good to like kill some time because the sessions are on campus. So if you have like time between classes, you can just go play a few board games, relax, and then head back to class. And actually look out for cool clubs, guys.
I think every college also has like every college has so much variety of clubs, and I think that's in the US, UK, Canada doesn't really matter, and there's always going to be something for you.
I really love London. Like I know it's not a UK thing as a whole, but I study in London. I really like studying in a city because you can sort of like leave campus, but you're still somewhere, and it's really nice. It's really fun to like it's like fun because you can hang out in so many kinds of different places with your friends, and you can just like go to a park and walk, or just hang out at like a cafe, and then you can also but you're also like it's sort of like the city becomes your campus, and you sort of like learn your favorite places, and it's really nice. And I think part of it may not have to do with UK just having like a different sort of freedom. I'm not saying we don't have freedoms, it's just different like climatization, but I really like that. So like yeah, embrace it wherever you go to college, like embrace the city, go like walk for ages, just figure out what's your favorite place in the city.
Yeah, so I think for me, one of the biggest things that decided Vancouver for me was that it allowed a double major. So that was one thing. But I think apart from that, like the actual place itself, like I love the culture because it's so diverse. There's so many people from like so many places across the world, and it's a very inclusive culture. The people are like very understanding and appreciative of different opinions and things like that. And I think, like Nayonika said, like downtown is like 30 minutes away from campus, and it's not that long when you're going on a bus with like friends and stuff like that. So I think for me, that was something really amazing, because if I wanted a break from campus, all I had to do was board a bus and I could like walk down, go downtown, and like there's a lot of stuff you can do. Like it's like any other city, and it's as simple as you could just go to a cafe, you could go shopping, and there's always like something happening. Like there's a museum, or there's like other touristy stuff you could do. Living by yourself, you also have that freedom of like going to places beyond like 11 p.m. or something like that, which is kind of something you had when you were going to school, because you had to come back home by like 11 or so. And I think that's one of the pretty amazing things that comes from like going abroad and living alone. I think for a major like econ and psych, because there's so many people who are doing it, there's a little, you retain that anonymity, but you still kind of meet similar people throughout all of your classes. Like supposing you have like a 217, 218 course, then you're going to probably meet the same people because they're requirement classes for the major. So I think in terms of that, while you retain your anonymity, you still have like some level of like knowing the same people over the years, so that you can like, you know, just be with people who are doing almost the same thing as you. So I think that's a big positive for me.
Finding it a little hard to focus on like one area of law specifically. Like I know people who like, oh, I love this aspect of commercial law so much, it's my favorite thing, and I'm like, I find everything interesting, I don't know what to do, but I love all of it, right? It like freaks you out, of course, if you don't like really know what the plan is, because when you're in school you have like a pretty good view of your future, like I'll go to college, that's what I'll do. It's like, unless you want to take a gap year, but like, you know, sort of where you stand. So kind of like the great unknown, I'm kind of trying to push away. But I would say that a good piece of advice I would give to someone who's looking at the UK is that, and I touched on this before, you don't have to go with the career that your degree goes with. In fact, a lot of people in the UK who are like in the legal field study like history. All of the politicians in the UK study like history or like English literature, and they're still doing this. So your course doesn't necessarily mean your life. So and yes, it is one topic for like 3 years, but within the topic there's almost always so much range that you don't know what you're getting. If you take like international relations or management, you can usually fit in other like optional modules from like other courses in, so you can do that. They do give you the choice to do that depending on your course, and if your course isn't that like broad in its like subject matter. So I think it's less that you are picking one lane and more that you're exploring sort of this one range of things, because in the end you will inevitably, near the end of your school, like your schooling career in like Canada and the US, you will do it, but because the UK degree is shorter, they make you make the decision sooner. But you could always take a foundational year as well in the UK, where it's like a sort of like 1 year where you kind of figure out what you want to do and then you can go on. So that's also an option. Like there's so much like options available. Like I would say just whatever you want to do, just do your research into it, because you'll always miss something out. Like I missed out so much stuff that I learned like talking to other friends who got into Ellis, like who went to go to my college and stuff. So
For me, it was less of like it being a flagship university for British Columbia than it being like in the top 20 for the subjects that I wanted to study, or like the overall global ranking. So I think it just adds to what you already have.
yeah, so I was just saying that like when you first look at colleges, you kind of like look at like rankings and focus a lot on that, because you don't really know where to start, and rankings are like easy numbers. And it's very important to remember that's not all a college is. Sometimes like some colleges that like aren't that heard of are like so good at really specialized topics that they'll be like number one in your subject, or like maybe number like 40 in the country overall, just because they don't like do like the similar kind of stuff. But then there's also something to be said of sort of like name recognition that comes from your college, and that will become useful later on, I think, in life. And it's a big thing because we are moving to a foreign country, paying like overseas fees most of the time, and it is a lot of investment. And sometimes, a lot of the times, I think like parents and schools and other people look for you to find one of these like flagship universities, one of like the best, the Russell Group, the Ivies. I don't know anything about US colleges, but you kind of like go for that name recognition because you are sort of like uprooting your life. And if you ever have to like come back to India and work, you're going to need one of the big name recognition universities. It is way easier to make someone understand that than saying I just went. But like that being said, don't underscore the universities that are like lower in the ranks, because they're still almost always really good. I would say like a lot of universities, one of the things about LSE and it's being a Russell Group is sometimes we have like amazing like guest speakers and guest lecturers. But I don't, because I've only been to LSE, I don't know what it's like in another university which is got like less name recognition. They might have like equally like great speakers coming in because they have like a staff that's so attentive to like looking at those kind of stuff. So you don't know. I would say one of the great things is just like talk to people who went to these universities, because they will give you like more info about it. They'll give you info about like the social life, what's the like dynamic of the university, sort of like what kind of people will you find there. And I think it's really important. I think
it's not just the number, it's also the university itself as a whole. If you as a student are applying with more than just your numbers, they're also looking at you as a person. So when you choose a university, it's also your job to look at them as more than a number and as a university as a whole.